So we are on our way to the courthouse, and I think in the middle of the week I really started to panic, like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen? Okay, so if you're new here, you probably have no idea what's going on, so let me give you some context. All right, so basically I've gone all in on my content creator and YouTuber dreams. No, literally. In 2017, God gave me a very specific dream with instructions that I was supposed to start a YouTube channel. So at the end of 2021, I finally decided to take a leap and step out in faith. I stopped taking clients and quit my relatively lucrative, but also all-consuming and honestly unfulfilling high-ticket fitness coaching business so that I could do what I knew God had told me to do 4 years prior. And so now that I finally stepped fully into it, I've been documenting the process of my journey to a life of maximum fulfillment because I was also instructed that I was supposed to be taking you with me. To show you the good times, but more importantly, to also show you the hard times that can sometimes arise when you're relying on radical faith and taking a non-traditional path to the life of your dreams. The parts we never see because no one ever shows us. The hope is that by bringing you into my process, you'll be able to witness the way God always comes through, even when it starts to look like things might not work out. Which brings us to October 2023. I was served papers that my landlord is suing me for rent owed and threatening a possible eviction. You can check out these videos here for a more fleshed out version of the story leading up to today. But for now, let's get back to the vlog. So today is the second court date, and sometimes being in this situation, I find myself questioning. Am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Am I going about it in the right way? And then I have to remember how I even got here in the first place. I have to remember that 2017 wasn't just the year that God gave me the dream with specific instructions for this YouTube. It was also the year God called me back to New York, and the first year that I had to step fully into trusting God. Here's what I mean. In the spring of 2017, before I had the YouTube dream, I was living with my parents back in Boston. It was about 2 years after I had taken a leave of absence from NYU, where I was studying to get my master's in nutrition. The 2014 to 2015 academic year was the worst year of my life, and I started having doubts about whether or not that degree and career path was right for me. So I went home to focus on personal training and work on growing my Instagram, with the hope that somehow I'd eventually be able to get back to New York, the city of my dreams. That same spring, one of my closest high school friends and role models, Shalonda, was visiting and asked me flat out, "So what exactly are you doing here?" And I was like, well, I live here. And so she's like, "No, I mean, what do you want to do with your life?" And so I told her, I wanted to be living in New York. I saw myself pursuing modeling, growing my online training business, and hopefully starting a YouTube channel. You see, at the time, even though God hadn't given me the specific dream yet, on Snapchat, I used to go on these rants talking about any and everything, and people would always message me asking for the link to my YouTube channel because they assumed I had a longer form video going deeper into the things I was already talking about, which always ended up being kind of awkward because I'd have to say, "Oh, well, I don't have a YouTube channel." Anyway, the point is, even before I officially had the dream, God was already telling me that I was supposed to be doing YouTube. So I tell her all of my life dreams, and she goes, "Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't understand why you're here because everything you're telling me that you want to do, you could easily be doing in New York." And then it got real quiet because I realized she might have a point. And so I said, "But where would I live? I don't want to go to New York and struggle. I feel like I would need a secure 6-figure paying job to actually even think about living there." And yeah, Shalonda really wasn't trying to hear it. So she goes, "Judine, there are so many people in New York who love you and would happily take you into their homes just to be around you. So many people, I'm sure, would just want to have your example in their home to help them implement healthier habits." And again, she had a point. Most of my friends, and honestly even family, lived in New York. Even Shalonda herself is a native New Yorker. And although I could see how she might be right, I just couldn't get down with the idea of couch surfing. It just felt like I'd be putting people out. That night, I called my brother and told him everything. And he was like, nah, she's right. And actually, I'm gonna be in New York this summer for my internship. Just come and crash with me, see what you can make happen. What's funny is I didn't even know that my brother was going to be in New York that summer when I had called him to tell him about the convo. It was like all of a sudden, something that I thought was totally out of reach was right there in front of me with no real effort on my part, and all I had to do was grab on and go with it. And so that summer, even with all the uncertainty, like the fact that I had no idea what would happen once my brother completed his internship, I threw all of my things into 2 trash bags, rented a car, and drove myself to New York City, with no real plan other than deciding I was going to fully trust that God would guide and lead me to exactly where I was supposed to be. And when I think back on it all, it was and continues to be the most magical experience. God really be holding it down. And there's so many crazy stories I'll have to tell you one day, but for now, I just want to give you some highlights because these are the things I've been going back to whenever I start to question my current radical faith approach. So first off, Shalonda was right. That summer, almost as soon as I got to New York, my Instagram, which had been sitting around 7 to 8K for the last year and a half, grew literally overnight to somewhere around 16K. And then, when my brother left at the end of the summer and I thought I'd just be going back to Boston since I hadn't reached my goal number of clients yet, Brittany, another one of my closest friends, told me that I couldn't go back. In her mind, the progress I'd made in just 3 months was 100% due to the fact that I was in New York. And so she said, you're gonna stay with me, we'll figure it out, but it really makes no sense for you to go back home now. And just like Shalonda said, without me asking, people were ready to take me in. And that's when I first saw just how powerful it could be to put my full trust in life in the hands of God. In fact, it was in the fall of 2017, while couch surfing at Brittany's, that God gave me the dream with all of the specific instructions for my YouTube channel. One of the main points of the channel was to show you how putting your full trust and faith in God to step into the unknown and follow your dreams actually can work. And 9 months later, another what I call angel on earth, Heather, who at the time was a new family friend, called to tell me I'd be moving to stay with her in Brooklyn and she didn't want to hear any pushback. At the time, I was in an intense training program to become a coach at Tone House, a boutique fitness studio and sports training facility in Manhattan. And as Heather put it, I needed to be sleeping in a bed, not a couch. And she had an extra room. And that was truly God, because once again, without asking, I had a place to stay. And this time, it was with a bed. And Heather was right. I desperately needed it. Okay, so real quick, we're almost at the courthouse, and there's a few things I need to say, and then we'll get back to the story. All right, so we are on our way to the courthouse. It's kind of windy today, so hopefully you can hear me. We have been praying all week, so I probably should be feeling nervous, but I'm not. And I think it's because I pretty much told myself, look, I'm doing everything that God told me to do, right? In terms of, like really walking into my purpose, being all in with it. And I think in the middle of the week, I really started to panic, like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen? But I prayed and was like, okay, God, what else can I do, So I looked into a few things. Specifically, I looked into applying for emergency assistance again because originally I couldn't. If you remember from one of the last court videos, I couldn't because they needed to see basically like recurring income, right? And right now, we kind of freelancing until YouTube really take off. So I looked into it again just in case, because obviously now I'm getting continuing assistance because that was the only thing that I guess qualified for at the time. And the woman that was sort of like helping me through that process basically advised that I do that just to have it, to help my case basically. And then now I'm also in this career services program because of the continuing assistance. They basically put you on this like get a job track. So anyway, all that being said, I was like, God, is there anything else I can do? And he was like, look into that emergency assistance again. So I did. Come to find out, you can apply, but you're applying as someone who's already getting continuing assistance. And basically, you know, you just let them know like, hey, I'm facing the possibility of eviction, so I actually kind of need more help. Anyway, obviously you'll have to pay it back, but they can at least front it for you so you can get out of the situation, and then you can just, you know, pay it back. So I applied for that. Like I said, I'm in the career services program and all that. So my hope right now is that that'll be enough to kind of ask them for more time. Like, hey, look, we're in the process of doing a lot right now. We're waiting to hear back from emergency assistance. We're waiting to be placed in a job, even though, you know, that's not really the goal. But right now, whatever I need to do to get out of this situation, we gonna do it. But my real, here's the real thing. I'm really just trying to make sure that this YouTube pop before any of that has to happen. That way I can just pay it off and move on from this, and we can start talking about more interesting things. Not that this isn't interesting, but it's also kind of like, okay, let's get the show on the road, because, you know, yes, part of the YouTube was to show you this aspect of the process, but also to kind of like go deeper into topics of purpose, like how do you find your purpose, things like that, which I think by now we probably start talking about already anyway. But anyway, we about to be there, so wish me luck, pray for me. But honestly, I feel okay, so don't worry. If you're worried, don't worry. Okay, I'll talk to you when I got out. Okay, so back to the story. Fast forward, 5 months later, training was over and I was officially a head coach. Originally, my goal had been to work my way up to being a training manager so that I could obtain a salary, because coaches were only paid per class and I wasn't sure that I'd be able to afford my own place off of classes in PT alone. But as soon as my cohort of trainees became coaches, Tone House became one of the first fitness studios in the city to ever offer a full-time salary to their coaches. Something I honestly never thought would happen. And so as soon as I got my offer letter, I found an apartment and was finally living in my own place with no roommates, mind you, in the city of my dreams. Okay, so good news. The case was adjourned again. So basically it's just giving me some more time. I'm actually gonna start just cold emailing brands for brand deals and stuff like that. But yeah, the goal is to really just have this YouTube pop off and pay everything so I don't even have to come back. But we have until May 7th to really get everything going. That's when it was adjourned to. So basically, God has given us more time and we're going to take it. That being said, let me get my butt home so that we can keep working on these videos. Okay, love you. And so this is what I have to remember. God surprised me in the craziest of ways. In fact, he built up the surprises over time, and in the right, most divine timing, everything I'd been praying for and working towards came together even faster than I had thought possible. But that's honestly how God works, especially when you put your full trust in him. The other thing I've realized is that all that time, when I had just gotten back to New York, I was too intimidated to start my YouTube channel, even though that's exactly what God was telling me to do. Which brings us back to this current housing court situation. What I see now is that not only have I essentially been given another chance to show you this process, but also I have the benefit of having already seen it work in my original New York couch surfing to living alone in my own apartment situation. I also know that this time, you were meant to see it all and to see God work in real time, not just me telling you the story of how I made it after the fact. A few weeks before being served the court documents, I was visiting my parents. And right before I left, my dad prayed over me and asked that God move in my life in such a way that I wouldn't be able to tell my story without God being at the center of it. That the story wouldn't make sense without the mention of God. And this is what I also have to remember. This whole entire situation is for the story. It's supposed to look like this so that you'll know that you can put your full trust in God with any and everything especially when He puts a vision in your heart and mind and places a purpose on your life. Because even when we can't always see exactly how it's going to work out, we can rest in knowing that God has already worked it out. We're just catching up to it. So if you've also been putting all of your faith in God on the path to the life of your dreams and things start to look bleak, remember this. Do not lose heart, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe, because at this point, we in this together now. And honestly, I'm just so glad that you're here. All right. I love you. See you in the next video.